Welcome to Communication, Connection, Community, the Podcasters Podcast. This podcast takes a deep dive into modern-day communication strategies in the podcasting space. We chat with interesting people who make the podcasting and speaking spaces exciting and vibrant. We also dive into the podcasting community with news, updates, latest trends and topics from this ever-evolving space. So strap in. It's going to be one amazing ride. Let's dive into today's episode. And my guest today is Mark Struczewski, also known as Mr. Productivity. He's a Houston-based productivity coach and host of the Mr. Productivity podcast. He brings well over 1,300 episodes of experience to help HR professionals conquer overwhelm. Drawing from his daily run routine and commitment to continuous learning, he offers practical strategies to overcome distractions and achieve clarity. He's also a sought-after podcast guest. We are so glad that he is here today. He's been on this podcast journey for quite some time. Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Still nervous. I've only been doing this for 7.5 years, so I hope I'm okay on your show.
Don't mess up. I'm just kidding. Don't you hate it when people say that? Don't mess this up. And you're like, whoa, this is the pressure. It's great to have you here, my friend. So 7.5 years in podcasting. What led you to podcasting to begin with? Of all the platforms you could have picked back in 2017, 18, what led you to podcasting?
2 words, Gary Vaynerchuk. In the spring of 2017, I happened to see a video from Gary, and he says, the future is voice and audio, and everyone needs to have a podcast. And when I heard that, I said, oh, I listen to podcasts. Could I have a podcast? I used to be an on-air radio DJ. So I went to Google. Most people, I guarantee you, heard that and go, and went on with their day. I took action, and I went to Google, and I typed in those words, how do you start a podcast? And I launched it on July 7th, 2017. And 7.5 years later, it's still my most favorite platform because nobody is like sitting down, listening to or watching a podcast. They're out riding their bike or on a run or taking a walk. And so it's a very intimate platform. And I just love podcasting.
Platonically speaking, Mark, I love you for a number of different reasons. Let me just share why. Number one, you spent years in radio, as did I. I should have asked you ahead of time because I could tell by the voice. I'm like, I think he's worked in radio. It sounds like that. Very changed industry over recent years. So, but as far as the audio platform, I completely agree. And there was a stat that came out recently, and I don't remember the exact number, but it's something like the number of people who are doing something else while they're listening to a podcast. But let me preface that by saying the most tuned into podcast platform, according to the stat, is YouTube. But what are people doing while they're listening? That's an auditory thing to podcasts. So you're right. I mean, the visual, we understand its importance because Meta says it is, but the audio is still a critical component of every podcast. Without it, it's just 2 people looking pretty on a camera.
I recently decided to do video podcasting because for reasons I don't understand, video podcasting is white hot. So I now host on, it used to be known as Spotify for podcasters. They just changed it to Spotify for creators like 2 days ago. And so I have my video podcast on Spotify. I put the same thing on YouTube. The rest of the world gets it on MP3 at their favorite podcast player is. I'm with you. I'm just fascinated by how radio has changed because now we can listen to Apple Music or Spotify, iHeartRadio or Pandora, hear whatever song we want to hear in the moment. We don't have to wait for the DJ to play the song. But podcasting has also evolved. One of the things I committed early on, before I even launched my show, when I was still trying to figure things out, I said, I'm never going to have ads on my show. That was a decision I made. A lot of podcasters, because they get into podcasting, as you know, for the money. You may look like Joe Rogan. Matter of fact, I describe myself as a clean version of the Joe Rogan podcast, just without the alleged $100 million Spotify contract. I got into it to serve people, to have fun. You got to go into it, in my opinion, for that. If you're going into it for the fame, for the fortune, I don't think you're doing it for the right reasons. I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
I believe it's a long game, not a short game. If you're getting into podcasting to make that, as you said, to be an overnight success with your first 3 or 6 or whatever it is episodes, unless you're already a success, which full disclosure, Joe Rogan was before he started his podcast. Same as like Oprah Winfrey, Tony Robbins, any of those big thought leaders, they were successful before podcasts even became a thing, right? They have that celebrity, they have that track that they've taken to get here. It's a long game, not a short game. You have to work the game or play the game, but it should be fun, even if it's for business. Most of the people we work with are working on podcasts, and a lot of them are business podcasts, but they shouldn't sound extremely formal unless it's something that needs to be. But it should still have an element of fun, because when your listeners are having fun, when you're having fun, rather, so are your listeners. They're engaged. They're more likely to engage with you if there's a level of fun as opposed to a level of fear or trepidation of being able to, can I listen to him? Is he going to yell at me this time? You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. And I can tell you when I got lazy, and I'll tell you what happened in 2021 on my podcast, and I had guests who didn't have a personality. So I always do a pre-interview call on my show. People stopped listening because I'm high energy. I identify as Tigger from Winnie the Pooh. And if I have an Eeyore, it just drops off because people are busy. And what I realize is I got to spend more time vetting people. And so when people get on a pre-interview call with me, they're shocked. We're talking about sports. We're talking about the weather. And they're like 10 minutes in the conversation, like, are we going to talk about your show? I said, we are. I already know what you do. I want to know, can you hold a conversation? I'm not going to listen to one of your old episodes. Can you hold a conversation in the moment? And they're like, wow, no one does that. Exactly. I mean, I wouldn't have put you on a pre-interview call if I didn't think you qualified. But the conversation, the energy, the positivity, the tone of your voice really matters. And if you're going to come off as like, I've got 5 ideas to become a billionaire, no one's going to listen. I don't care if there are 5 easy ways to become a billionaire. They're going to tune out because it's boring. And I don't do boring. I don't know about you. I don't do boring.
No, not at all. I will quite often, as I said just before we turned on the recording, this is a very conversational show. I don't know where this conversation is going. I have no clue. Well, I have a rough idea, but it is definitely more engaging and more exciting when you have something to say where, number one, it's conversational. I don't do boring either. And I think you and I are carved from a similar piece of cloth, or cut from a similar piece of cloth, rather, in the sense of, and maybe that comes from the days of working in radio, where every time you flipped open the mic, you had to be excited and you had to be maybe not overly animated. I don't know what earlier training was like, but I had a program director in my early years who would say, Carl, smile. Well, what do you mean smile? He's like, well, smile, because when you smile, it makes a difference to how you sound. And it's true, it does. I'm smiling right now. And when I'm not smiling, it sounds very different. But most people don't understand that, but you can hear a smile, right? So I definitely agree, though. It should be fun. It should be engaging. It shouldn't be boring. Find a way to make it fun, really, that's what I do with this show. And I'm getting the feeling you do that with yours too. Now, full disclosure, I'm not a sports guy, but that could be fun in itself to have some fun with that being the sports guy, right? But that's just one little tiny piece of the conversation. So I like that pre-interview concept that you have, not to pre-interview you for the show, but to figure out, can you do more than just fog a mirror?
That's a very good way to put it. The only sport I watch in the entire world is European football. We call it soccer in the rest of the world. I love it, but I love it so much, I don't use analogies like baseball or hockey. I'm using European football, and people go, you keep talking about it. I'm like, why would I want to talk about something I'm not interested in? Because I'm going to sound boring. But you get me talking about the real football. I believe it's the real football. I get excited. And I think people need to realize you get one shot at this thing called life. Why wouldn't you want to live a life like Winnie the Pooh or like Tigger? If you are young and don't know who that is, go to YouTube. It's what I grew up with. You want to have that happy attitude, because I can tell you, happy people are productive people. Now, I'm not saying Eeyores can't be productive, but more often than not, it's the Tiggers and the Winnie the Poohs who are productive because they're happy. If you're trying to figure out what's one nugget Mr. Productivity is going to give me on the show that will make me be more productive, channel your inner Winnie the Pooh, or if you want to go extreme, be your Tigger like I am, and watch your productivity improve.
All I can hear is that song now going through my head. The wonderful thing about Tigger is that Tigger's a wonderful thing. That's all I can hear now going through my head when you've said that you're the Tigger in the world. And I love it. That's a really good example. I find that in life in general, you're right. I think that when we spend all our time going, woe is me, everything always happens to Eeyore, that we're not productive. We're not focused on, yeah, we all have bad days. You have bad days. I have bad days. Do you focus on it? Do you dwell on it? Or do you find a way to turn that frown upside down, to sound cliche-ish, and find something that makes you happy? Journal, focus on positivity, because I'm gathering based on your coaching and your experience that that's what drives productivity, is when you're positive and when you start to think about all the great things that can happen. Firstly, the great things that are happening in your life right now, number one. All of a sudden, your brain starts to open up to, oh my gosh, never thought about that possibility. And what about this? And thoughts on that?
I love football so much that most of the games are on the weekend, but when they're playing during the week, now keep in mind, I follow English teams, which means I'm 6 hours behind them. And their 8 o'clock games are on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon here. I will actually sit down and watch a game at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and people will go to me, oh, Mr. Productivity, how productive is that of you watching a match in the middle of the afternoon? I'm like, it's actually very productive because it brings me tremendous amount of joy. I get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. So by 2 o'clock, I've already worked 8 hours. So I've already put my work in. It's not like I'm watching football all day. I'm watching one match in the afternoon. And my wife has a real job. Apparently, I'm a solopreneur. I don't have a real job. On lunch hour, I'm sitting and watching replays from games I haven't seen yet. It brings me joy. I'm telling you, joyful people are more productive. Maybe it's not European football. Maybe it's watching some funny videos on YouTube. Maybe it's scrolling on TikTok or Instagram a little bit, not a lot, a little bit. Maybe it's walking your dog. Maybe it's going out in the backyard and playing with your dog. Whatever it is, if you can find a way to bring joy in your day, you will be more productive. Even if you're doing a job you can't stand, inject joy into your life and find out how much better and how much more productive you are.
I want to ask you this, and I want to keep going on this path of productivity, because I feel that a lot of podcasters or even podcast guests, they need to hear this, because one of the challenges that happens in the podcasting space is, we've already alluded to it, is you get to 6 or 8 episodes and say, that's it, I'm done. It's too hard. It's too this. It didn't work, for a number of different reasons. So I want to ask you this. When it comes to those moments where you're, in your day, finding joy, watching the match or walking your dog or playing with your dog, do you schedule those in your day? Would you recommend setting aside the time, like putting a hard stop in your schedule to allow yourself to do that?
Yes. So let me explain. If you are not disciplined, then schedule it. If you are disciplined, fit it in. So for example, we will do this interview. You blocked off an hour for this conversation. When we're done, I will go do something that brings me joy. Now, this is going to sound nerdy, but for me, I'll go work on my newsletter. It's going to come out on Saturday. That brings me joy. I'm sorry. It brings me joy. Okay. What I do is very, very rarely, and it's often my fault, will I go back to back to back. I had a day recently when I had that, and I looked at my schedule that morning. I'm like, how did I let this happen? I wasn't paying attention. And I had like 2 podcast interviews. I had one on my show. I had a coaching call I had to go to. That was on me. I wasn't paying attention when I created that. That's rarity. So I like do a podcast interview, take a break. Do something else, take a break. So I have this like sine wave, if you will. I don't know what a sine wave is. I vaguely from high school many years ago. But I think people need to find ways to give them pockets of joy throughout the day. And I don't mean 3 hours of binge watching Netflix. I mean 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just something to give your brain a break. See, when you're doing something joyful, your brain is actually taking a break. You're allowing your brain to take a collective breath. So that works much better in terms of productivity and your health, mental and physical health, than if you work from wall to wall.
I think there's statistical information out there, not to quote stats or anything, but that says that if you're working on a task, for example, that I can't remember, it's every 30 minutes or 45 minutes, but you should stop, get up, do something, and then come back to it after 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Same kind of idea where you break it up so you're not just focused on the grind or grinding through. Same kind of idea.
Yes, I teach something called micro breaks. And what a micro break is, you get away from your computer. We're always sitting on these Zoom calls. So I'm at a standing desk right now, but maybe you're sitting. So you stand up and you walk away, walk outside. If it's cold, grab a jacket. If it's raining, stand under shelter and walk outside. Do not get on another piece of technology. Don't grab your phone. Go outside. Don't talk to anybody. Don't even think about anything. Just be quiet, be present, 3 or 4 minutes. I've had clients tell me, WhatsApp me or call me, and they'll say, I can see the finish line, but I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so frustrated. I'm so angry. I know what you're going to tell me to do. Go take a break, but I don't understand. I can see the finish line. And I say, hey, you can do what you want to do, but I have a question. Do you want to cross the finish line bruised and bloodied, or do you want to cross the finish line like Usain Bolt? And they're like, well, I want to cross the finish line like Usain Bolt. Go take a 5-minute micro break. But I'm your coach. You going to listen to me or not? Guess what? 100% of the time they come back, you are right. I know I'm right. Because what happens is you can see the finish line. You're all frustrated, but your brain just needs a 5-minute break. Is 5 minutes going to kill everything? No. Walk away from your technology. Allow your brain to take a breath and come back and watch the energy level change in you. You may very well go from Eeyore to Tigger and finish like Usain Bolt. I don't think I said the word Usain Bolt 3 times on a podcast in my entire life.
You just did. Yay, something new. But I really like that analogy, though, because I think one of the challenges is, and by all means, I want to hear your thoughts on this, is we feel like it's a race. We're in a competition, be it with ourselves, be it to hit a deadline because our coach said, hey, you got to have this done by Thursday or whatever it is. We feel that we have to just grind through it, focus, get her done, get her done, get her done. And I think that there's also a faulting, if I can say this, that comes from the corporate world as well, where we've been trained, and maybe it goes further back to that. Our education systems, you're in the US, I'm in Canada, but our education systems that say, hey, you got to do all this work and have all this done. And this is how you're successful, is to work, 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 work. That's when once you've done all that, then you're successful, or then you've hit your milestone or your goal.
One of my favorite questions I'd like to ask someone when we get on a call, which I'll tell people how they get a call with me at the end of the show, is they'll say, well, I got to do this, 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 and this. And I say, why? What do you mean, why? Why do you have to do those things? The blank look on their face is priceless. They're like, well, let's go through them one by one. Why do you have to do A? And it's amazing. They don't have an answer. I'm like, okay, time out. You don't understand why you're doing these things, and yet you're doing them. And once I get people to understand that, I can see the light come back on in their eyes. Are like, yeah, why am I doing all these things? Because people, to your point, are so intent on going from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7, instead of stopping and go, wait a minute, I only need to do number 7. Why am I doing 1 through 6? But because they've always done it. I hear that all the time. We've always done it this way. And then again, I go, why? Why? Well, my boss. Well, let's get your boss on the call. Are you serious? Yeah. I want to know why you're doing this. I mean, maybe he was taught, and that's the way his boss told him, and that's the way that boss told him. And I want to encourage people, whether you're a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, if you work for the corporate world, don't be afraid to ask the question, why? Why are we doing this? Because I'm willing to bet Pareto's principles live and well. 80% of the people are going to go, I don't know. I think we have a problem.
100%. And I think that this conversation about productivity, like I said, it does move over into the podcasting space as well, because again, we think that we have to do these 86 things in order to have a successful podcast, or we have to make it sound this way, which means we have to do this litany of things. There's a certain truth to, yes, okay, there's some things we need to do, but I always start with Simon Sinek. I start with what's your why when we're working with brand new clients? Why do you want the podcast to begin with? What's the purpose? That'll help you figure out the strategy, the goals, the journey you need to take. And then then you can start to figure out what's the one thing, like you said, what's the one thing you need to do consistently, small, consistent actions. What's the one thing you need to do every day? or twice a week or whatever it is to make sure that show is a success. You don't need to do 86 things. What's the one thing? What's thoughts on that?
I love what you just said because your reason may be because I want to start a podcast. Okay, that's fine. Matter of fact, I was on a conversation. My best friend is my cousin, and we're going to start a new podcast. And matter of fact, we have a weekly Zoom call. We just get on the call. We just talk about anything. I said, hey, let's start a podcast. And so I shared my screen and I was in Claude coming up with some ideas. We got some really cool ideas. And we're not doing it for fame or fortune. We're just doing it because we want to do it. No one listens. Doesn't matter. We want to do it because we want to do it. So some people do it because of a lead magnet, which is what I do my podcast with. I want people to go to my website. Some people do it because they hope to be rich like Joe Rogan. Some people just want to have fun. I've known people, they have one podcast. It's a business podcast. It does really well. But then they have a podcast. It's just them and their spouse. And I'm trying to convince my wife because she's kind of shy around the microphone. I want to have a podcast with me and my wife about the struggles about being a solopreneur, because a lot of the years she went to work and paid all the bills while I'm trying to figure this world out. And I shared that story with some people and they go, oh, I would listen to that show. So I go to my wife and say, honey, people saying they want us to do a show together. And she's like, oh man. But that would not be a monetary thing. And my podcast with my cousin wouldn't be a monetary thing. It was because we just want to have fun and we don't get bogged down in the downloads. And speaking of downloads, when I first got in the podcast, everyone does the same thing. How many downloads? You keep hitting the refresh button. Once you get into, as long as I've been doing it, who cares if it's 25, 2,500, 25,000? They don't care, because that's not why I'm doing it. As a matter of fact, if a guest pitches me on the show and they ask me how many downloads you get per episode, I'm like, you're disqualified. They're like, why? Because that tells me you're not doing it for the right reason. You're doing it because you want to promote your brand and you don't care about my audience. You shouldn't care if I have 4 people or 4 million people listen. If you truly want to serve, you should come on and say, hey, I want to serve. Do you agree with that?
I 100% agree with that. And I know people who that's their modus operandi. If they can get on podcasts that have over 10,000 downloads every single week, then that's their goal, those kind of podcasts. I think, like you, I think that's the wrong reason. A podcast can be extremely successful with 25 downloads. Or like you say, 25,000. As a matter of fact, a 25,000 download podcast might not be as successful as the 25 download podcast, because the 25 download podcast might have better structure or the right lead magnet, which then is, for business, what you want, right? It might be bringing in more business than that other one. So yes, I definitely agree with that. The downloads don't matter. And I think where we get that from is, number one, conventional media, radio, television, that have those metrics in place that say who's listening, who's watching, who's tuning in. But I also think that we've allowed it to spill over into the podcasting space. So advertisers, sponsors look at those numbers. And again, because they're looking at conventional media as their metric, it's a completely different game. As a matter of fact, if you're getting 25, 30 downloads consistently every show, to me, that's a successful show. Anything above that is gravy.
100%. And I want to know, can we talk about AI in podcasting? One of the things I used to hate as a podcast host is, what am I going to title this thing? I hated that. Now, my best friend, Claude AI, I take the transcript. I've got this massive prompt. I plug the prompt in, plug the transcript in. It gives me an SEO-friendly title, the meta description, the podcast description. I even tell it to take the transcript and make a readable blog post, because nobody wants to read a transcript. And it does it like in about a minute. And it's like, because it does that, I no longer have to stress about what am I going to call this. I can focus on the actual podcast. So for me, using AI, do all that back end stuff, which is a pain in the butt anyways to do. For me, it's a productivity tool, because now it doesn't take as long to produce the episode and get it up and scheduled, because now I don't have to go, oh, I had Carl on the show. What am I going to talk about? We talked about A, B, and C. AI will just look at it and instantly come up with a title. Do you use AI for yours as well?
You know what? I never used to. And then my hosting site built in AI tools right into it. And I'm like, I'm going to try this out. Just curious, morbidly curious. How is this going to work? And honestly, usually it's pretty good. You still have to go in and tweak it a little bit, but honestly, it's such a time saver. My team doesn't have to figure out what's his title going to be? What's this going to be? It's in there. It's in there. It's done. It's usually very efficient. And again, you still have to go in there and tweak it. But I think there's a trepidation to AI thinking it's going to replace jobs. I don't think so. What I believe it's going to do is make us more efficient where we need to be efficient. Think back 20, 30 years ago. If you were a transcriber, you literally listened to a recording and wrote it down or typed it out, and you'd stop in the recording, type something out, play it again, stop. That was the efficiency back then. But now we're even more efficient. But you still need to be able to check it, tweak it, whatever it is. So yes, I think AI definitely has its place, and it's not going away. It's just like the industrial age. Like the industrial age didn't go away just because somebody was not wanting for it to happen, right? It still happened, and it's evolved just like podcasting is evolving and AI is evolving. I've got you for a couple more minutes here, but I just want to ask you this question. If you could go back and start again, or if you were starting again right now, knowing what you know, what would you do differently if you were starting a show?
I would tell myself, do not look at your downloads, because I hate metrics. A lot of people on social media, when it comes to podcasting, they judge a piece of content by the metrics. They won't look at the content. They'll go, oh, 2 likes, scroll. You haven't even looked at the content. I would tell myself, do not look at the metric. Maybe your show's 3 or 4 years old. Did he say 3 or 4 years? I said 3 or 4 years old. Focus instead of getting really, really good with your show. Matter of fact, the first episode I ever did, I said, my worst podcast episode ever. And in the show, I said, I should get better with every episode. Now, it's up to the audience to judge if I did, but I would say, hey, don't even look at the downloads. It doesn't matter. Maybe the first day you make sure you're getting downloads, make sure the RSS feed's working. It doesn't matter, because it took me 5 years to realize a download doesn't mean someone listened. And even if they listened, to take action. I care about people jumping on calls with me than I do about them listening to my podcast. I'm just being honest.
I love the honesty. And man, this has been an amazing conversation. I know that you are Mr. Productivity. What's the best way for people to connect with you? I know you've got some great resources for them. So how can they do that?
One place, MrProductivity.com. You have to spell it all out, MISTER, MrProductivity.com. There, when you go to my page, you can find out my 2 favorite platforms are LinkedIn and Snapchat. Yes, I'm a 59-year young solopreneur. I love Snapchat. You can sign up for my email newsletter. You can subscribe to my podcast. But when you go to my page, you're going to see what I want you to do. And that's to hop on a 20-minute call with me if you are serious about becoming more productive. Don't waste my time. Don't waste your time. I'm only looking for serious people. But just go to MrProductivity.com.
Mark Struczewski, this has been so much fun. We'll make sure all of that information, by the way, is in the show notes. You don't have to remember it because it'll be there for you. Before I turn you loose, though, I'll give you the final thought, my friend.
Please take care of yourself. You get one shot at this thing called life. Healthy people are productive people. So make sure you're taking time to go for a walk, go for a run, go for a swim, go out in the sun. Just stay active, because if you don't take care of yourself mentally and physically, you may die a lot sooner than you'd want to. And I believe you're here for a reason. So don't leave this planet 1 minute before you're supposed to.
I love it. And find that joy. Mark Struczewski, thank you so much for being my guest today. And hey, thank you for being a part of the show today. So glad you could join us. Believe it or not, I can't work this magic by myself. So thanks to my amazing team, our audio engineer, Dom Carrillo, our sonic branding genius, Kenton Dilborowski, and the person who works the arms, all of our arms actually, our project manager and my trusty assistant, Jillavel Tiongo, known to us here simply as July. If you like what you heard today, let us know. You can leave us a comment or review, or even send us a voice note. And if you really liked it, we hope you'll share it with your friends and your colleagues. If you don't like what you heard today, well, please feel free to share it with your enemies. And if you know of someone who would make a great guest on the show, let us know about it. You can get in touch with us by going to our show notes where all of our connection points are there, including the links to our website, LinkedIn, and Facebook as well. And if you're ready to be a guest on podcasts or even start your own show, let's have a conversation. We'll show you the simplest way to get into the podcasting space and rock it. Because, after all, we're Podcast Solutions Made Simple. Catch you again next time.